We'll call together the October meeting, the House of Human Welfare, House of Community Development Committees. Alderman Lipman's present, myself, Alderman Kirby, Alderman Joe Budge, Ms. Terry Bond. Staff is Mr. Kyle Tibbs and Tia Green. Is that correct? Yes? No? I'm sorry. Why do I have Green?
Too late.
I'm sorry. Takia. Okay. I'm so very sorry.
Tequila without the L.
Yeah. Business before the committee is first approval of minutes of our September meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. And our second order before this committee is the appointment of Mr. Corey Johnson to the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis Board. Good evening. Mr. Johnson, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Corey Johnson. My address is 102 West Washington Street, Annapolis, Maryland, 21401.
Okay. Questions?
Sure, I'll start. Mr. Tibbs, thank you for being here today. Help me understand the context, the bigger picture here before we get to Mr. Johnson's qualifications, if you can. So some of the bigger picture questions that were raised at last council meeting were whether this appointment is still allows HACA to satisfy the requirements for membership of the HACA board. Some of the questions that were raised were obviously Mr. Johnson has a expertise in security. So I'm interested in having a better understanding of how the membership of the HACA board overall, how security complements the existing, as opposed to being repetitive. Is there a need for additional security expertise? What were some of the other bigger picture questions that were raised? Whether the appointment was politically motivated, I think, was a theme of some of the questions. I think that was about what I captured. Mr. Johnson's resume seems certainly perfectly suited for the position. I don't know Mr. Johnson. I didn't know his predecessor. So my questions certainly aren't personal in any way. I'm just trying to have a better understanding before we dive in on the bigger picture questions.
I understand.
Okay. So the state of Maryland requires that two members...
I think you need to introduce yourself first.
Kyle Tibbs, Board and Commissions Coordinator for the City of Annapolis. So the state of Maryland requires that all housing authorities have two resident members on their board. So Sandra Chapman and...
Is it Jackie Wells?
Yes, Jackie Wells. Satisfy that requirement. So that meets that. So Deborah Johnson was a resident, but...
The two of them meeting the residential requirement, now that there is specificity on whether one has to be in the senior residence, right? I don't have it in front of me, so maybe I should get it in front of me.
One does live in senior housing.
That would be Sandra.
So Sandra,
Chapman,
okay. Okay, so I'm sorry, go on with the membership qualifications.
So as far as we're concerned, we meet all the state laws required for HACA board, and Corey's appointment would still satisfy that. As for Corey's qualifications, I'll go over the last few appointments by the mayor. Chip Dordan previously was the CEO of Anne Arundel Medical Center, so he brings leadership to HACA and obviously financials. Kimberly Cornett, who you guys recently approved, I have a copy of her resume in case you'd like to see it. She has extensive background in housing investment, and so does John Dillon, and then Chris Flynn has legal expertise. So all of that combined, there's no one on the board that has that background in safety. And I'll read the mayor's quote here in the paper. It says, "I have chosen each nominee for the board very carefully, intending that they represent the needs of the community." And right now, the needs of the community say we need someone that represents security. So that's why Corey fits the bill.
Okay. And then the last question was about whether this was politically motivated, either ousting the last person or not renewing the last person or appointing Mr. Johnson?
You will have to discuss that with the mayor. I can only speak on Corey's qualifications and how he fits in with the board as our coordinator.
Okay. Did you capture anything of the themes from the council meeting? I think you were there, right?
Yeah, I attend all the council meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there were any
There was a
others.
diversity question, but
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, the board has ample diversity,
Right.
both minorities and females.
Okay. Either of you have any questions on this topic before we move on to Mr. Johnson?
I do.
Okay. If it pleases the chair, Mr. Johnson, I'm happy to have you introduce yourself and let us get to know you a little bit.
Okay. Corey Johnson, I'm 48 years old, Annapolitan. I traveled a lot. I've worked entertainment security most of my life. I work for Marriott right now in compliance, doing a lot of inspections of hotels, making sure that all their safety and OSHA laws are up to compliance. I worked here closely with Mr. Griffin in the community. A lot of people know me from the background from Mr. Griffin and also Mr. Bishop Craig Coates. So both of those gentlemen have been my mentor in working with the community.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your qualifications to be a HACA board member?
Well, I know I bring a safety component. I'm not sure what you guys are looking for.
So what does that mean to you? So I heard entertainment security, so already a more security background than I do, so I'm sure you do have, I just don't know how what does that mean to you for what you would bring to the HACA board?
So I build the relationships between the suitor and the police department. I merge those relationships. If there's a third component, security in, I merge those relationships as well. I am the go-to person. I facilitate all. I do the assessments. I write it out. I build the plan, and I merge it together with those components and those law enforcement officials and emergency officials and prepared emergency plans as well. So whatever contingency plans need to put in place, I handle all of that. I did it in 41 cities, 11 months out of the year.
What's your expectation for what your responsibilities will be as a HACA board member?
Well, I want to know what really, can I have an assessment to see what's wrong, what needs to be fixed on all levels, whether it's financial, what needs to go in, whether it's safety component, whether it's in-house. I need to look at all the components and all the, different situations and then put a plan together. My expectation is to really learn, because I understand that Chip is on the board and he's a great guy. I'm looking forward to working with him, and I know Chris Flynn now. All the other people I don't know, but I know Chris Flynn and I know Chip Doherty. So really, I just would like to work with them and see what I can bring to the table.
What's your expectation on how much time it's going to require from you?
Well, I heard that it's 1 day out of a month. Is there more? Possibly two or three. I'm accessible. I'm right here in the city.
I had the impression it was more than that, but I
Oh,
couldn't tell you.
okay.
I'm not the expert on that either.
Okay, I understand. I understand that it's a 5-year appointment, and they're going to be meeting a little bit more frequently because we have some challenges within the neighborhoods. So,
You're familiar with some of the legal issues that HACA is under with some fund. I don't want to mischaracterize the situations because I don't think
I've heard about it.
Okay.
I'm more of a person that needs to be hands-on to really to do an assessment, But I've heard about it, and I heard about the issues that are there.
What are your biggest concerns about this, being in this position?
I really don't have any concerns.
Really?
No. No, I just want to see what I can bring to the table.
Okay.
And I need the education component to see what I can bring to the table.
Okay.
So I'm not up for the challenge, really, you know.
What's that?
I'm up for the challenge, really.
Okay.
You know,
Great.
I love a challenge.
Great.
So,
Mr. Chair, I don't think I have any questions right now.
Okay. I do. You say you know Mr. Dorden and you know Mr. Dillon? Oh, no, Mr. Flynn.
yeah.
Have you worked previously with those gentlemen?
No, I haven't.
No? Okay. I guess you just CEO.
Yeah, I met with
Hospital.
them. I met with Chip Doherty through Larry Griffin, you know, doing the hospital while they were inside of the Stanton Center.
Okay.
And Mr. Flynn, he just watched him in the courtroom. He is
Okay.
an advocate for the Veterans Affairs. Yeah.
Okay. So, and you just knew it was a vacancy on the board and you just became interested in
Yes, sir.
Okay. Alderman Budge.
So, thank you for volunteering for this task. A question we like to ask, knowing that this is a volunteer position and highly underpaid, what makes you interested in serving our community this way?
Well, I've watched Larry Griffin and I've watched Bishop Coates, and I sat under them, Bishop for 20 years. Larry Griffin, I've been in the background for maybe about 12 years. So I guess it's time for me to step up and see what I can do. So I bring a certain component that is a need in the community. I'm going to see what I can do if I put it to work.
Great, thank you. As I said before privately, thank you very much for
Appreciate it.
volunteering to serve.
Thank you.
It's fine.
No pay.
Let me just ask,
Yes, sir.
public-private partnerships is probably, or I guess RAD right now, two developments are going to be done with RAD very soon. But before then, it was a public-private partnership such as Oberry Court, what do you call it? What's the name of that place? Penrose, yeah. Yeah, such as Penrose at Oberry and College Creek. How do you envision the housing authority going? The route with RAD or public-private partnerships?
Well, it looks like it's going public-private partnerships. I mean, it's a construction going right across from my house. And I believe that Timothy
Yeah.
Gardens is right out my front door. And that's under private partnership.
Yeah, that's actually been sold. That's
Mm-hmm.
Homes for America.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of her name, but she brought that. And
Yeah.
Timothy House and Timothy Gardens.
Timothy Gardens, right. Correct.
Okay. Alderman Lippman.
To echo Alderman Budge, thank you for putting yourself forward. I think it's a difficult job you're about to get yourself involved with. I think you've got a lot of challenges. But as some of your predecessors have said for us, the nice thing about getting involved in an organization that's so much trouble is that it's most likely only going to get better from here.
Okay.
So good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hope you have a lot of success, and your success will be the city's success.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, I move that we endorse the nomination of, or the appointment of Mr. Johnson to the Housing Authority to the full council.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. Good luck, Mr. Johnson. You
Thank
will
you.
be meeting more than once a month.
Okay.
Far more than once a month.
Okay.
Just after good news on Tuesday, quickly followed up with the announcement that they had accepted an application for RAD to redo Morris Blum and get some monies to do Newtown 20. And you pick up the paper later on this week and you see, well, Miss Wellborn's leaving.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on over there. At some point, I'm gonna get a audience with Miss Wellborn because, quite frankly, she's moved the Housing Authority further along in her short tenure than a whole bunch of people did have in the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And I guess she's been here how long? About 3 months?
Mm-hmm.
6 months? Yeah, I wish she would stay, but I guess she was lured out of retirement for the short term. But she knows what she's doing, and losing her is gonna be a shock and open up the market for a new executive CEO at the Housing Authority. For how long is that gonna remain open, so.
May I say one other thing?
Absolutely.
So this doesn't affect me. You know, this is my last Housing Committee meeting. I'm coming off the council. I'm not running for re-election. My suggestion to previous members that I don't think has really come up is be more involved with this committee in the next term. I don't care who wins what elections. It's just, in my mind, HACA as an entity and the Housing Committee of the City Council
Right.
should have a lot more communication.
Communication, right.
You know, I understand that HACA board is busy in its own right and has lots of meetings, but we hardly ever get a HACA representative at this meeting other than these nominations. And I just think it behooves both entities. We'd be better educated and better able to help. Who knows what help we could provide to HACA, but you would think there would be some synergies and some collective resources that could be put to better use.
Absolutely.
So please take that sentiment back to your colleagues and encourage. You know, it won't be in this before December. So when the new council is sworn in December, whoever's on there, just think about that, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is city council meeting on the 30th?
23rd.
23rd.
Is that what you said?
23rd.
Yeah.
All right. Takia, can you put that on the agenda? Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good luck to you.
and good luck. Okay, this hate-free zone is the third piece. But, yeah, we're gonna do 045-17. I've just heard, though, that the Rules Committee didn't get to R-27-17, hate-free zone. So, we deal with that when we get there.
I was going to suggest, I've always operated, in regards to what other committees do, if it's before our committee, we should act. You both know I have significant concerns about this legislation. There's apparently no one here to defend it or to bring up changes that are needed, so I would suggest when we get to that point, we just vote it down.
Okay, fine by me. You're the lawyer. Okay, so, ordinance O-45-17, garbage and refuse collection at food handling establishments.
My turn?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I sponsored this legislation out of concern that's been expressed both in front of this council as well as directly to the alderman and the city manager regarding the collection of food waste throughout downtown. At the moment, the situation is that we regulate when food waste can be set out, and actually all commercial waste cannot be set out before 11 o'clock the night before, 10 o'clock, I think. But there is no regulation about when it needs to be picked up. And It has caused some distress because we have, when these regulations were put in, the character of downtown was considerably different than it is now. We have multiple coffee shops. We have people coming to attend the coffee shops starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. And they are greeted by piles of rubbish all over downtown. And so this legislation and state law says that you cannot collect, the garbage trucks can't do their collections prior to 6 a.m. So this legislation is an effort to accelerate the collection of garbage downtown so that we can have a clean environment for our customers to enjoy, who come down to enjoy our market's house, our market space, as well as Main Street and so forth. There have been pictures recently as part of this discussion of this on Facebook of piles of garbage on Main Street at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning during the boat shows. I mean, this is not a great state of affairs.
Right.
And doesn't help commerce in town in the slightest. So this is that's what this legislation does. I believe it was on the agenda for the Rules Committee this afternoon, which I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, and perhaps Ms. Green could tell us a little bit about.
They had a revision to.
You could microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sure, Mike.
So they had a revision to state that it should say the downtown, no, I'm sorry, the historic district.
Okay.
And that was the only thing, and then they recommended it
yes.
favorably.
So it was a limitation for the historic district, is that what you're saying?
Yes, because if they wanted to specify, if at first it was saying downtown areas, so then that would only be, city dock. And so they wanted to make it for the historic district. They
Yes,
thought that it was a good legislation so that the garbage trucks could be off of the city streets at an earlier time.
I know that I had a conversation earlier with Alderman Arnett, who expressed concern that the businesses and residents in Eastport do not want early collection. They want to enjoy their sleep-in.
Yes, and he said that in the meeting as well.
And so in Eastport, they did not want this 6 to 8 a.m. window. They wanted to say, can you not start collection before 8 a.m.?
So historic district would exclude
So
Eastport?
the historic district excludes Eastport. In fact, it would limit this legislation to just the historic
The
district,
historic
downtown
district.
area.
Are you okay with that?
And yes, because we don't hear complaints. We, the council, do not hear complaints about this outside of, and when you get outside of the Ward 1 downtown and West Street and Maryland Avenue commercial districts, the commercial areas tend to have much more open space, and a lot of the garbage pickup is in dumpsters that get tipped. They don't get left out on the curb for pickup nearly as much as they are here.
Anything else, Joe? I have a question, if you're done.
No, that's it.
So, looking at this legislation, I'm sorry I haven't read the bigger context of where it comes in, but this paragraph only talks about garbage and refuse. It doesn't talk about recyclables or compostables, and arguably those are different than garbage and rubbish. You could argue it either way, same thing. And you refer to waste, but earlier in the paragraph it says rubbish. Would you suggest that throughout the paragraph, each time it says garbage and rubbish or garbage and waste, we add in recyclables and compostables?
I would not. Those don't tend to be as much of a problem.
Compostables might be smelly. If it's the first couple days, it doesn't usually
Mhm.
smell, but it certainly could attract, doesn't attract insects, could attract rodents, depending on what's in it. It mostly entirely affects the ward you represent, so if you don't want to include either, I'll defer to your judgment, but just thought I should raise the issue.
I think my concern is more as a legislator than, and that is that the regulation of recyclables and compostables is clearly different than the regulation of refuse. And I am not familiar enough with the I know that we passed a bill somewhere in midterm to say that compostables didn't count as refuse.
Yeah, that legislation was for
And-
trucks. The trucks that collect compost don't need to be, get a permit like the solid
Yeah.
waste trucks. That was my legislation.
So I am not sure what the consequences would be
Okay.
if we were to include that here.
Fair enough.
And without understanding that, I would leave this as a challenge for the next council.
I can live with that. I'm good.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval by this committee for 4517, the recommendation to pass O 4517 favorably to the full council.
Second?
All in favor? All in favor? Motion's been made and second. All in favor of approving it, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Motion passes full council 3-0. Let the record reflect that the motion goes to the full council favorably. The last item on our agenda is in fact resolution -27-17, hate-free zones. Earlier tonight, I don't guess the Rules Department took this piece of legislation up. They didn't get to it after 2.5 hours of subsequent legislation. They didn't get to it. We certainly had problems with the way it's written, members of this committee. So I don't think we would go forth with it until some amendments are properly made or the legislation is rewritten.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that. As I said to the full council when this was introduced, I think this legislation causes more problems than it attempts to solve. There have been no attempts that I'm aware to make the amendments that you were just mentioning to try to correct those deficiencies. Most notably, this legislation would not take place on all city streets, just city property. It doesn't define who hate groups are or what constitutes hate. I think it creates it creates lots of ambiguity and clear violations of the Constitution. There's a clause at the very end that says essentially everything. So long as it falls within the Constitution of the United States. Clearly, that was the one line where an attorney spoke up about writing this legislation, because everything would be null and void because of the Constitution and laws of the United States and the state of Maryland. So I think this legislation really needs to be withdrawn and rewritten, but that's not what's before us, so I would suggest that this committee vote this resolution down. That's my motion.
I will second the motion. And with adding the discussion point that the operative part of this resolution is to tell the city administration not to permit public events that relate to hate matters as a matter of public safety, and the public and the special events legislation that we already have, the code that we already have in place, directs that public safety is one of the considerations in permitting special events, so that this essentially is redundant
Right.
to existing code.
Unnecessary.
Okay. I've heard the motion, and I've heard the emphasis placed on the motion by Alderman Budge and both Alderman Lippman. I agree that it's not ready for prime time, so let's send it back to be rewritten in its entirety with some emphasis placed on public safety and who we permit to parade and in our city. So, all in favor of this not going to the full council, going to the council unfavorably? Aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Okay, let the record reflect that R-27-17 unfavorably goes to the full council, 3-0. There is no more business before the committee right now, and I think this is our last meeting as a body.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say it's been a pleasure serving with you and Alderman Budge with you as well. Ms. Bond, since you're going to be the only one returning out of us. Well, you have the only chance of returning, so. So I just want, gentlemen, I want to say thank you for what I've learned from the two of you. I certainly have learned from both of you, and I respect your contributions and what you've done for the city, for this committee, and more globally than that. I think it's the city's loss to lose the two of you to the council. Ms. Bond, thank you for your contributions, especially as a volunteer, and to the others that aren't here, certainly appreciation is extended their way as well. And thank you always for the court clerk's help.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, and thank you. Thank you all both for sitting here and going through this with me too, and I've learned a whole bunch sitting in this seat from the two of you as well as the rest of the body, and just getting through it. That diligence and hard work can make it happen. We come out of here with some middle ground most times. We do the job that we expected to do on this committee. So I just want to say thanks to you both and all the people who respond to it.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank both of you for being great teachers. I arrived on this committee not knowing the first thing of what it was about. And I hope to think that I've successfully made some contributions here, and that we've moved Annapolis forward in a positive direction. So thank you for your help. Thank you for your companionship and your advice. And it's been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Meeting's adjourned.
Yankees are staging a comeback. We could still catch the end.
Are they? Yeah, 2 to 4. What is it, 8th, 7th? Bottom of the 8th.
Bad guys. Astros.
Good night.